So somebody threw that in, and the beer kept it a little longer. It became an intricate part of beer. Beer without hops is like bland. It's sort of like chicken soup without salt. It's really needed. So anyway, and we as microbreweries, we use lots of hops. Most breweries use hardly any. And there was even a study. It was in a paper. I don't know if anybody saw it. It was supposed to be a big joke about a year and a half ago. Anybody see it? It showed like 15 bottles on the front page. You know, it was like, why are so? And then the big joke about something to prevent certain cancers. And then you go inside. And anyway, the whole joke was, in order to get enough of this enzyme or whatever's in beer, you have to drink 15 beers a day. But I found out, I checked into it, they were talking 96% of all beers made in America has hardly any hops in it. We measure hops in IBU, International Business Unit. An average Bud Mills, of course, is about 10. Okay? What I drink every day is a Pilsner or Pale, that's 40. Divide 44 into 15, piece of cake. That doesn't mean I won't get that particular cancer. Just, I think it was a 30% less chance. So what I'm trying to tell you, hops is really, it's loaded with antioxidants, hops is really good for you. If you learn nothing else from this tour, please learn to drink beer with a decent amount of hops in it. Good for you. There's good stuff in beer. And that's one of the things. Hops is, like I said, it's very good for you. Okay, I get excited. I digress here. Okay, where am I at? First, I'm going to tell you the right way to make beer. The way that beer's been made for thousands of years. Then I'm going to tell you the new American way, started during Prohibition, and continuing today. Okay. The right way to make beer, you take malted barley, like I mentioned. Malted barley is barley that's been wetted, allowed to germinate, pop open, and then dried. If it's dried at low temperatures, it becomes pale malt for pilsners and light lagers. If it's kiln dried at higher temperatures, it becomes caramelized for your crystal malts and for your ambers and your darker beers. When we make our stout, we use about 10% burnt malt, black malt, create the coffee chocolate flavor, again, the stout report. The malt is what gives, so that's where some have a nutty flavor, some have a smoky flavor, all kinds of malt. We use about a dozen different malts here. So we take the malted barley, we run it through a mill. We don't grind it up like flour, we just break it. We first start out with about 500 gallons of water. We mash in about 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we dump 1,900 to 2,000 pounds of grain. It's sort of a thin oatmeal. It's this vessel right here. Mashed up. Big kettle with a stirrer in it. That's all it is. There's heat on the side too. There we go. And then we raise it. When you first taste it, you mix that mixture. You taste it. It tastes like starch. That's what it is. But we raise the temperature slowly up to 157 degrees Fahrenheit. Then we leave it set for about 30 minutes. Something kind of magic happens. An enzymatic action takes. The enzymes in the barley convert starch to sugar. It gets as sweet as honey. It doesn't taste like simple syrup. It's sugar water. It's sweet, but it has this wonderful malty flavor. We then take it from this, now this is mixed with the grain. Now we move from this vessel to this one. This is where we separate the grain from the liquid. In the bottom, there's a false bottom with like little slots. And very slowly, it trickles out. We rotate it till it runs nice and clear. And about every minute or so, a gallon or so comes. It takes about an hour and a half to get all that liquid. We sparge and rinse all that liquid off those grains. The actual grain, the outer shells become the filter bed. It runs clear. And from there, it gets pumped. A little pot on the side. It's not that thing. That's to get rid of the spent grain. There's a little pot. And they about every minute or so, a gallon or so is pumped over the next vessel. They all look the same around the corner. And that's the brew kettle. And there we boil. During the boil, we use the hops, like I mentioned. We use lots of hops. Okay. And we use different hops depending on the type of beer we're making. We boil it with the hops for about an hour and a half. We have something that very few breweries have, possibly. It's internal calandria. It creates evaporation is very important. There's a lot of flavors in beer. Sometimes when you go to, brew pubs or home brews, you pick up some earthy, grassy flavors in the beer. And by boiling them harder, those flavors go off the stack. Sulfury flavors, they go. So I love it. I bought it 7 years ago. Our old brew kettle got about 4% evaporation. This gets 7. So we boil the heck out of it with the hops. Then after the end of the boil, then we pump it to one more vessel. They all look the same around the corner. And that is the whirlpool. Now we got to get the hops out. How do we get them out? We spin it around. They go kind of settle to the bottom. Then now it's sterile. It's been boiling for over an hour. We got to take it down to the right temperature real quick. If you want, maybe some bacteria could get in there. So the way we do that is run it through a heat exchanger. Heat exchanger are like plates. What you're doing is every other section you run, one section you pump cold chilled water. The wort goes by it. And what happens is the chilled water becomes hot. It goes to a hot water tank for the next brew, and the wort becomes cool. It goes in there, a few seconds later, it comes out the other end. It goes in at 200-some degrees sterile, comes in at, and we're making a lager at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and ale about 67 degrees. From there, we pump it to the fermenters. We add the yeast and we ferment it. Ales ferment out quicker. We still ferment our ales lower than most breweries. We ferment about 67 degrees. We ferment out, it takes about 4 or 5 days to ferment out, and then it takes several weeks to settle out. Lagers are much harder. When we started, and I'm really glad, we had a German consultant, and he said, do you want to do it to make the lager, do you want to do it the old German way, the new German way, or the American way? I said, what's the difference? He said, temperature. The old German way is 48 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. New German way is 52, 53 degrees Fahrenheit. The American way is 56, 57, who knows, sometimes 60. What does that do? Well, I didn't think much of it. It makes the beer cleaner, crisper. But I just didn't realize what else it did. Because, I just did it, and then I joined the Master Brewers Association. And we had seminars to educate ourselves about new techniques and stuff in the brewing. Anyway, we had a discussion about yeast propagation and also about yeast, testing yeast for viability testing. I found out the acceptable level in the industry, this is the major manufacturers, is about 70% viability, meaning after we harvest the yeast, I guess I didn't explain that to you. We ferment it for about a week, then we leave it settle out, and then about a week later we harvest the yeast. We use them over again about 7 or 8 times. But anyway, each time we do it, we look at it under a microscope, and we also do a viability test where we see which are healthy and which aren't. And the acceptable level in the industry is about 70%. By us fermenting real cold like that, the old European way, ours run 88, 90. So what happens, and it takes longer though, instead of fermenting in like 5 days, it takes 7 or 8, 9, 10 days sometimes. So they ferment, they struggle. The yeast would really like it warmer, but that wouldn't be as good for them because it forces them to struggle. By them struggling, the ones that reproduce are the strong ones. And after a while, we get a super strong yeast, and I'm just saying I would never change that, just for time, just to save a little bit of time. But I'm a strong anyway. Hardly any brewery in this country, maybe a couple of micros, make true lagers the old-fashioned way. We do. Victory does. Stoudt does in here, but most of them, it's fast, mass-produced. But that's what you have to decide. But true lager is fermented very cold. But then after we